What people say during a wedding and the vows, the ceremony, or the speech can make or break the entirety of the event. And we've all been to the weddings where the speeches went on too long, or the vows were imbalanced, or the ceremony was just generic. But when done correctly, it can get everybody laughing and crying. People learn something about you. They get more invested in the rest of the evening. And that's what we want to go for. We want to get something that's incredibly personalized, that gets into the fun stuff of your relationship, that tells your love story. I'm Brian Franklin. I'm the co-founder of Vows and Speeches, and we help people write and practice these moments. But in this podcast, we're going to get underneath the hood of it all. We're going to talk to wedding planners, videographers, photographers, and DJs, and hear more about their experiences and the best of and worst of what they've seen. We're going to talk to comic writers about writing jokes and psychotherapists about getting over public speaking fears. But we're also going to talk to people that got married and hear about their experiences in their own wedding and the processes they went through to write what they wanted to write. Same thing with wedding party speakers, fathers of the brides, mothers of the groom, that kind of thing. Best men, maid of honor. So please subscribe to this podcast, because every week we're going to have something new for you that will help you personalize your wedding, give you new ideas, expose you to some of the best people in the industry, and we're going to have a lot of fun. If you need help writing your wedding speech, your vows, or your ceremony script, just reach out to us at vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches.com. Or you can send me an email to brian@vowsandspeeches.com. That's Brian with an I at vowsandspeeches.com. My conversation today is with Robin Ballard. Robin Ballard is the head of Robin Ballard Events, and she's been voted the best wedding planner in Orange County by California Wedding Day. She also runs an organization of wedding professionals out here and luxury wedding professionals called Curate. And she was our planner when I got married 7 years ago to my wife and Vows and Speeches co-founder, Nicole. Robin did an incredible job then and really was indispensable. I was excited to talk to her, and here is the conversation I had with Robin. Robin, in the 11 years that you've been in business, what kinds of things have you seen, good or bad, when it comes to wedding speeches, for example? Like, obviously, one big threat is that people go on too long. But are there exceptional memories that things that you've seen that looking back, you're like, oh, I wish they didn't do that?
I mean, there's definitely been some very cringe-worthy speeches for sure. You know what? I think everyone always thinks, oh, it must be the best man. He must share, horrible stories. But it kind of goes for everybody. You know what I mean? We've had some father of the brides that have given some cringy speeches. One in particular that kind of stands out is the bride was from Canada. And she was actually a friend of mine. And I had never met the dad before, but he kind of went on and on and on about joking how she was marrying our other guy friend to get her green card. And it was just so awkward because it wasn't true, but he was just trying to be funny, right?
And you just kept going.
But it just kept going. And you're just kind of like, man, let's turn on the Jeopardy music and like move on here. But yeah, I mean, there's always those cringeworthy moments for sure. I think typically, I think it's the length of time that is kind of the biggest red flag. People just kind of keep going and going and going. And I think you really have to think ahead of like the stories that you're sharing. You know what I mean? Some people share such intimate personal stories, which is great, but literally no one in the room knows the person or can identify with the story. And it's just, I think you
inside
can touch
jokes
on those points.
Yeah.
You can touch on those things, but you got to kind of wrap it up,
How long do you think wedding speeches should be?
We always kind of give a rule of thumb to tell the speech givers like 3 minutes, because we know people will go longer, with nerves or overwriting. But 3 to 5 minutes, I think, is safe. I think it also just depends on how many speeches they're giving. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As a planner, how much time do you normally account for speeches ultimately?
I mean, if it's going to be kind of your standard, it's going to be the 3 speeches: the father of the bride, the best man, and the maid of honor. So I usually allocate about 15, 20 minutes for those 3 speeches,
Yeah.
And we we ask the couple, are they long-winded? Are they going to be short and sweet? And, sometimes everybody surprises everybody with, how short or long they can go.
Yeah. One of the things that I advise people about is you have to time it. Everybody speaks at a different pace. Some people are very good readers. Some people are not. So you could have the same word count and have a pretty wide range of times associated with it, depending on who's speaking. But people don't know what 2 minutes or 3 minutes looks like on a page, right? And so it might be different from one person to the next. So you have to read it and you have to time it, because there's no other way to know what it's really going to do. I think that's also an area where we really encourage people not to wing it, even with bullet points, right? Don't speak extemporaneously, because when you're up there and you're speaking, it's almost impossible to know how much time has elapsed. Let's talk about the things that you love hearing. Like what are some of the standout ones for you?
I think some of the best speeches I've heard is a good mix of nostalgic stories or memories with also a little funny humor, right? I mean, you kind of want to hit both ends of the spectrum. I mean, you correct me if you're wrong, being a speechwriter yourself, but I think it captivates everybody with those ooh and ah moments of something cute, but then also something kind of fun and memorable, So being able to have a nice rounded mix of those two things, I think, are great. I think also something that you probably see a lot too is sometimes these speeches can be so kind of one-sided to the person. You know what I mean? Let's say the maid of honor and the whole speech is about the bride. Well, yes, predominantly the speech should be about her because it's this, old time friend or sister or family member. But I do also think it stands out when they also touch on like stories of maybe how they met the groom and how, now the friend is now with this new significant other. So I think that is also kind of a successful speech when they can kind of incorporate both people.
Yeah. And sometimes you wind up with someone that says, well, I don't really know them very well. I'm their high school friend. I haven't really spent that much, they moved to a different city. I haven't really spent that much time with them. And that's when you could still focus on, of course, the parts that but you could talk about the changes you've seen or heard in your friend, or since they started with their partner, or even just I remember when I first heard about you and how excited she was, or something like that, right? And get into the things that you can speak to, but maybe aren't quite as detailed or intimate, but they're still meaningful. Well, let's talk about, is there anything that you hear too regularly? Like, do you feel like are there certain lines that come out every time, or seemingly every time when you do these weddings, that you're just like, oh gosh, I don't really want to hear this again?
That's like a really good question. I think we just do so many weddings. Yeah. I probably black out on some of these.
For those that don't know me,
Yeah, exactly. But I think there are like probably templates out there like on Google that people like pull these like, lines from. And I feel like sometimes it's usually the best man that throws in something, you know what I mean, he thinks is so unique, but it's so corny, I
heard a story once of someone grabbed a template and did the speech, and then another person did the same speech, basically. Like they had the same template that they had slightly altered in the same wedding. Yeah, in the same wedding. Let's talk about ceremonies. There's a big trend, of course, over these last years of having a friend or a family member become an officiant and get ordained online, and then suddenly they are the celebrant, but without any real experience or guidance to do that. How do you manage those situations, and what seems to work and what doesn't?
Yeah. I'm split 50-50 on it. The personal side, I love that it's a family member, or a friend, or a special person that's going to be officiating. But at the same time, they're not the professional, right? I mean, typically they're a good public speaker and the couple's confident in that, person to manage it. But there is nothing like a professional officiant in a way of, does the sound go out? Can he or she carry on, the ceremony without kind of missing a beat? Or are they, is it going to kind of, mess them up and they're kind of like, hemming and hawing? Right. What happens if, a gush of wind comes over, just how do they handle the situation, because they're doing, multiple weddings every single weekend, right? So there's nothing like hiring a professional. When it comes to our weddings, we've had some really great family friends and family members that have officiated, and we've had some pretty awful ones. I think it's just they're just kind of a bit of like a deer in the headlights of like what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just delivering a speech, like you are actually coordinating these people's, marriage and this, kind of ceremony that's happening, right?
Yeah.
So it falls on us as the planner a lot of the times, because the couple's like, can you review what they've written? And do you think this is good? And again, it's a lot of pressure on us. I'll happily always review it, but I am not the expert, to manage this. And even just something like, a couple saying their vows, just little things, stepping out for the kiss, little things that they just miss and forget as many times as we can try and remind them.
Yeah, get out of the way. Yeah, so
So
you're not in the photo, get out of the way for the kiss, right?
Yeah.
Just the certain elements that have to be in there, and certain states, for example, you have to have them say "I do." You can't just declare them married. They have to, say that they are affirming that they want to do this. But when it goes, goes really well, what are some of the favorite things that they do? I mean, what makes a good ceremony for you?
Yeah, I think the benefit of having like a someone that they brought in is they typically obviously know the couple really well. So it does feel just more organically personal, because they are legit sharing stories and memories of the couple, because this person knows them. I'll be honest, some of the professional officiants, they're great, but some of it's kind of the canned things. Like, there's one officiant in particular that literally says the same line at every single wedding, and no one knows that. Like, the couple and the guests all think it's hilarious and they love it, but for us behind the scenes, we're like, oh my gosh, that was reused again.
Yeah.
But there's just so much that they can work with really kind of only meeting the couple like once before the wedding day. You know what I mean? When you really think about the logistics of it, it's a little weird. Like, sometimes the officiants are meeting the couple like literally the day of the wedding, 30 minutes before, and now they're supposed to kind of walk them through this professional thing.
Which is is fine if they just want to get married and they just want to get straight to the cocktail hour, right? And it's just the act of getting married. For me, I love the friends and family officiants that tell the story, tell something about the couple that you might not have known, or go into the pieces of their relationship that make them fun, that make them uniquely them. And I think when you do that, you get people leaning in a little bit into the rest of the event, right? They now know them, because they might not. They might only know one side of the couple. They might only have met them once or twice.
Yeah, or you get like work colleagues or parents, friends. Like they may not know the whole story.
Right.
So
right.
I love that. I love the sharing the personal side.
When it comes to vows, a lot of people don't do their own vows because either they're uncomfortable saying them out loud, or they don't feel they can do them justice. And obviously that's one of the reasons we have a business, but is to help them through that.
Yeah.
But from a technical standpoint, do they normally just read it off a piece of paper, or do you advise that they have a vow book that they put that in? Or because there's also the issue of I might be holding a microphone, right?
Right.
So I have to turn the page. There's some logistical things there in terms of how it functions. But what do you advise? What do you tell them?
Yeah, if they're writing their own vows, I always recommend to do the vow books, because not only is it aesthetically pleasing for your photos and videos, but also I think it gives them a little sense of confidence to be able to hold this book that's been written or typed out and taped in. So typically the officiant is holding them, that we're giving them it prior to the ceremony, and then they're handing them to the couple up at the altar. So I do recommend that. I think it's just overall just looks better and feels better.
Yeah.
But also we've had couples that are more comfortable whipping up their iPhone and they've written it in a note, and that's comfortable to them, because let's be honest, we're all glued to our phones, so it feels.
But it's such a terrible photo.
Right? It's such a terrible photo.
It's such a terrible
photo. So terrible. So the vow books are definitely something I recommend.
Yeah.
But you can only.
And that
give
goes
as much advice, and if they take it, they take it. You know?
And that goes for speeches too. Like, I never read it off your phone
Yeah.
or a tablet, because especially if you're doing it in the dark, now you've got that uplighting, right? That comes from your phone that makes it look like you've got a flashlight underneath your chin. But,
I know, it's not cute.
but it's also easier to lose your place because you're now scrolling, and it just gets. It can get very clumsy, but the photos, it just looks like you're looking at your phone.
Yeah,
right.
No, 100%. What if you get a call, or what if the screen blacks out? Like you said, losing your space. Yeah.
Do they ask how long, when they do want to do their own vows? What do you tell them in terms of time? How much time they should be taking to do it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll be honest, I'm not typically asked that a lot from the planner side. I think it's more of just kind of writing, what comes from their heart. But also, we've seen a lot of times where it's, one partner over the other, their vows are longer than each other's, or they're more emotional, or they're more serious, and the others are just short and sweet. So I think, a service like yours, being able to kind of
coordinate
review
it.
Review both of them and be like, hey, let's add a little more stories to your side, and maybe a little less humor, or
I had one of those recently. I had one of those recently where the bride was hiring us for certain, and the husband wasn't sure that he needed to. So I said, no problem. Why don't you, he had started it, and I said, well, why don't you send me what you have and let me take a look at it. And the draft that she had was, let's say, a minute and a half to maybe 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. His was like 15 seconds. And so I was like, we're going to need to work together.
Yeah.
Like, this is why. But I think the biggest concern that people have when they're doing this is that they actually get to say what's in their heart, right? They want to articulate how much they love this other person, and that's not easy. It's not easy to do that in 2 minutes. It's real. I would have trouble doing that. Sometimes you need help, but do you like it when people cry?
Yeah.
Do we like it? I love it.
I know. I do. No, I do love it. I think it's that one moment. I mean, the whole wedding is really a party. So the ceremony is such a short period.
Yeah.
We were actually talking about this on our podcast about how just so many guests, for whatever reason, like they just don't love the ceremony. Like they're either super late, or they avoid it, or they're just like complaining that it's too long. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, this is why we're here. It's for them to legally get married and to share their story. And you can sit in your seat for 20 minutes and it's not going to kill you. You got a 5-hour party behind you. So I don't know. I think I love the crying, especially because it's like, I'm getting to know the couple. So I can only imagine, as a family member or a friend, it's got to be sweet to kind of see them cry, and I think, the more the tear jerking is usually when it's a groom that's maybe not super emotional and he gets choked up. I mean, that's just like such a Hallmark moment, right?
Does everybody get a videographer? Everybody that works with you, do they usually get a videographer?
Typically they do, because we're doing a little bit more on the higher end weddings. So I think video is really important to people. And typically in those packages, they're getting the raw footage of their ceremonies so they can watch it back, as well as their toasts and speeches. Because we've had many couples that are like, oh my gosh, like I blacked out during the ceremony or during the speeches. And it's like, there's just so much going on that day that I think it's super special to go back and listen to it. Because I think you're gonna hear a little bit differently, because you're not in that moment of kind of just all that pressure and stress. I mean, let's be honest, eyes are on you. So I have had couples that have been like, oh my gosh, we rewatched our ceremony, and boy, were the vows touching, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The ceremony by the officiant, and it's a distracting time.
It's definitely something I would recommend. I mean, obviously we want people to have the video of these moments, but my own wedding, for our wedding, we had opted not to get one. We were just like, oh, well, we don't need a video. But thankfully, one of our friends videotaped the speeches, because now having that where our kids, were 15 and 16 and giving speeches, and to have that memory recorded in any way is just such a fun thing to have. So
it's interesting you say that, because I think video is the biggest regret for people, to be honest, after. it's those touching moments. Like, when in your life do you really have like a friend or a family member, like literally talk about you for 5 minutes? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's a special time. So,
Robin, how
yeah.
did you get into this? How did you wind up becoming a wedding planner, and what was your background?
Yeah. So I actually have my master's in business. So I worked for Pacific Life for many years, doing organizational change and development, and thought that was my calling, being a corporate girl and climb that ladder and get my corner office someday. And kind of quickly realized I was not an 8 to 5er, and just kind of that corporate structure was slightly soul killing. So I had a mentor and a friend who was a big event planner in Orange County, and she actually connected me with a venue in Laguna called 741. And they were in the midst of going through new ownership and getting their wedding program started. And I joined and took a leap of faith and left my steady corporate job and went to start this, wedding program as a 1099 back in the day, and really never looked back. I mean, it was such a blessing to have that opportunity and to be so young and, kind of green in my career, and was able to start a whole wedding program and oversee and manage a venue, was huge. So I was there for about 4 years, and then eventually I broke off and just, focused on my own company and did weddings all over Southern California. But I really attribute a lot of my success with starting on the venue side, just being able to kind of understand, how a venue works and all the food and beverage and all the staffing and,
Yeah,
running a
all the
hotel. We had
mechanics.
12 hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now as a planner coming into a venue, I'm like, okay, I get the mechanics and the behind the scenes and can be more well-rounded.
What do you like most about being a wedding planner now?
I think now in my career, I'm taking much fewer weddings, just a higher caliber. So I love the design aspect of it. I mean, those are our clients now, with multiple six-figure budgets that really want to throw all that attention into the details and the design and the flowers and personalizing it and really make a guest experience for the guest.
Hmm.
So that's my favorite part, is being able to take fewer clients now, to focus on the design and really, collaborate with creating an experience, that's once in a lifetime for these guests and the couple.
You hosted a curated event recently where you had Whitney Forbes, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
For,
the
the
hot
Hot
press.
Press, a calligrapher, and it was interesting because Whitney and I were talking about taking lines from the vows or lines from the ceremony that could be
Mm,
personalized as mementos for couples, or but also that the interview process on our end, when we're interviewing couples as part of the development of the vows or the ceremony, that information could come back and filter back into either live events or something that involves words,
yeah.
but really it's background information that becomes perhaps fodder for some design aspects or some activities and that kind of thing. What are some of the ways that you feel couples, whether you've done it or you've seen other people do it, what are some of the more ingenious personalization aspects that might have come from like learning something about them?
Yeah. Well, to piggyback off of the Whitney thing, I love that idea. If, you
Hmm.
did like an engraving station and incorporating something into that, I love that. Something recently I just saw on Instagram, actually, that we might be doing for a wedding in this July, is the couples wrote kind of love letters to each other. And that was a big backdrop behind this really insane bar. And it was actually in their handwriting.
Oh
And it
wow.
was printed on these huge, like 16-foot walls. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like how special, and like, talk about personalization, and have not only their words of love, but their handwriting printed. And I was like, we need to do this. But I agree. I think, if you can pull out some, certain things and incorporate that into the wedding with small details, whether it's a phrase that they say to each other that's maybe,
Yeah.
calligraphied on a mirror somewhere or on the bottom of a menu, like little touches. I'm all about that.
Yeah, nicknames or things like that. I was just
Yeah.
like laughing to myself thinking about those letters in the background. Like I wonder if they had to black out any pieces of it, like
I
like
know.
redact certain aspects of those letters.
I know. I think they were probably written intentionally to be printed, but
yeah.
yes, exactly. Some red lines in there.
There you go. There you go.
I know.
Robin, thank you so much for your time. How can people find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Robin Ballard Events. We also we need to have you on our podcast. My friend Kelsey and I, we have a podcast called Behind the Veil, and we just share and reveal crazy wedding secrets and stories. So it's a little bit more on the humorous side, but you can find us there, Behind the Veil OC, and then Robin Ballard Events.
Great. I'd be happy to do it. And thank you for joining us. This is the first podcast, and hopefully we'll have you back again, and appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Oh, and I'm excited for you. I think this is an exciting new chapter for you, and you're going to give a lot of great insight and information for people. So
thanks, Robin.
Best of luck.
If you need help with your vows, your wedding speech, or your ceremony script, you want to make it personal, you need some help practicing it, visit vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches.com. You can reach out to me there. You can send me an email at Brian, BRIAN, at vowsandspeeches.com. Reach out to me. Thanks again to Robin Ballard of Robin Ballard Events for being my guest, and we'll see you next time.